I would like to share some thoughts about pediatric guidelines for screen time in this podcast. Kids today are spending more time than ever before with digital devices, with their technology, with their screens, and at younger ages. The American Academy of Pediatrics and the World Health Organization have really helpful guidelines for limiting screen time for young kids, and those will be posted in the show notes. But the reality is that even though there are guidelines, there's really no magic number that's just right for every child and for every family. What's most important is the quality of kids' content and how your kids engage with that content and the balance they have with the time they're online doing things with screens and the time that they're doing other things, the things that are really vital to support their healthy development. Simply calling all devices screen time can really miss some pretty important differences. And when I talk about screen time, I'm not talking about kids doing their homework, if that's all they're doing, or talking about you at home working from home or doing necessary things like paying bills. I'm talking about recreational or entertainment screen time. And common sense media research studies identify that there's really 4 main categories for screen time. The first is a passive category, and that's mindlessly watching videos or shows, television programs, scrolling, kind of like being on autopilot, just kind of killing time, if you will. And most of us are familiar with that, and most of us as parents grew up with that because back in the day, television was all that we had. The second kind is called interactive. It's playing games, sometimes video games, sometimes strategy games, but it really engages in some problem solving at some level. The third is communication, and that's video chatting or using the social media platforms. And there are many social media platforms that adults and kids both use, and some of those at their peril, especially when they're not well monitored or supervised. And then the fourth form of screen time is content creation. It's kids making stuff. It's doing digital art or creating music or coding. And so to say that all recreational or entertainment screen time is bad is really unfair because some of it is really quite good and valuable. It's really the amount of time that is of greater concern in addition to the quality. So the American Academy of Pediatrics guidelines allows for some screen time for children under the age of 2. For this group, what's really recommended is parent involvement. And so parents for children under the age of 18 months are really encouraged to avoid screen time other than video chatting. FaceTiming with grandma, grandpa, having conversations that involve children so that elderly people or other friends or neighbors or relatives can see the children through their screens if they're not able to see them in person because of distance or time. And then for children 18 to 24 months, under the age of 2, between 18 months and 2 years, finding a high-quality program. If you choose to introduce screen time, even at that age, you don't need to, and then you watch it with the child. You engage with them so that they are part of and you are part of that experience. And then from ages 2 to 5, limit screen time to 1 hour per day of high-quality programs like Sesame Street. Recently, the World Health Organization issued its first ever guidance on how much screen time children under 5 should get, and it's not very much. The UN Health Agency identified that children under 1 should not have any screen time, while those under 5 should not spend more than 1 hour watching screens every day. And as a rule, less is better. Again, the AAP and the World Health Organization have somewhat different guidelines, but if we had to find their common ground, it's just not very much. They don't really want kids to have a lot. The guidelines are similar, and the group recommends that children under 18 months should avoid screens other than those video chats and the things that involve high-quality program. But I really think it's important for us as parents to know why. I mean, have you ever been told, here's a guideline, and then you said, well, why? Well, let's break it down. And this is information from the American Academy of Pediatrics. So for children 2 years and under, screen time is limited for a number of reasons. Children younger than 2 learn and grow when they explore their physical world around them. They're learning to move, to crawl, to walk. They put all kinds of things in their hands. Sometimes they put things in their mouths. But their minds learn best when they interact and play with parents, siblings, caregivers, other children and adults, and other objects that are physical, so they can manipulate them and hold them and try to figure out how they work. Children younger than 2 have a hard time understanding what they see on a screen and what that media is and how it relates to them and the world around them. They might be entertained by the flashing lights, by the constant activity, but they're not learning anything about the real world, about social and emotional information and how to get along with others. However, children 18 to 24 months of age can learn from high-quality educational media if their parents do it with them, if they play or view the material with them, and then maybe even reteach the lessons. And so the guidelines follow that developmental knowledge. Media should only be very limited, and only when the adult is standing by to co-view, talk, or teach. For example, video chatting. And for children 18 to 24 months, if you want to introduce digital media, that's great. Make sure it's high-quality programming and not just turning on cartoons and letting them mindlessly watch it, or letting them watch shows with their older sibling because they seem interested and they're quiet. Use media together with your child and avoid just having your child sitting in front of the television being passively entertained. So that's for the youngest child group. The second, children ages 2 to 5 years. Here's the developmental information about that. At 2 years of age, many children can understand and learn from live video chatting. So young children can listen to or join in conversations with their parents. And then children 3 to 5 years of age have more mature minds. They're not quite there yet, of course, but they're developing. So well-designed programs like Sesame Street in moderation. It's just not nonstop Sesame Street. It's just a limited amount of time, normally 1 or 2 hours. It can help the child learn social skills and maybe even start to pick up reading skills. So the guideline is to limit screen use to no more than 1 hour per day. Find other activities for your child to do, and we'll talk about that in a different podcast, that it's healthy for them. It's for the health for their bodies, healthy for their minds, healthy for their social relationships. Choose media that's interactive, it's nonviolent, that's educational, and it's pro-social. And again, co-view or co-play with your children while they're engaged with programming. And by co-play, let's imagine you're watching Sesame Street and it's a sing-along. You sing along, your child sings, you're modeling, you're having fun. It's a much more memorable experience, and you bring that screen experience, that virtual experience, into the real world by doing it with them and making it more of a present moment, interactive, in real time experience for them. In the next group, ages 5 years and older, today's grade schoolers and teens are really growing up heavily immersed in digital media. They may even have their own mobile device and other devices to access their digital media. So make sure that their use is not displacing other activities. And again, we'll talk about this in a different podcast. But the question isn't how much they're using only. It's what are they doing? What are they not doing because they're spending time on their screens? So check your children's media use for their health and safety. It's very important to monitor where they're going, what they're doing, who they're connecting with, what kind of interaction is going on, because there's a lot of scary things out there that you're already aware of. For older children, tweens and teens, they're more likely to have some level of independence, and they're going to want to have a say in what they choose and watch. And usually things that you would prefer they not choose to watch because they're curious, because all their friends are doing it. So they might be more interested in consuming any form of media without your oversight. And again, part of that is natural developmental tendency for tweens and teens to want to pull away, to want to have more autonomy, but they don't have the developmental ability to really distinguish what's good for them all the time. They can make good choices, but it's pretty easy for them to get duped, to get drawn into things that aren't healthy for them. And so be mindful of that. Parents should engage their teenagers and their preteens in conversations about their media use. Digital citizenship, what is that? And we'll do a podcast on what that even looks like, and what they're seeing or reading, or what they're hearing about, or what's going on in their social lives when they're online, and what they've learned from their media use. So I think it's all about that conversation that parents and kids can have about their social media use. There are 3 really good sources for factual information on screen time and children, and those are the American Academy of Pediatrics, the World Health Organization, and Common Sense Media. For more information from these organizations that I've referenced, please find their links in the show notes. Thank you for tuning in and considering this parenting topic. I hope this information added to your growing toolbox for parenting your children. Please consider exploring other topics in this series. Remember, no one parenting tool can do everything. We need many tools to become the best parents for our children. Your children's future depends on you and the time and effort you invest in them today.